Recording. Okay, team, ready to start?
Yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Matana. I'm one of the co-founders of Vytal, and this is Natalie, my other co-founder. Vytal does research and insights for Gen Z specifically, and we're really excited to partner with Kale and Flax in the world of multicultural marketing to bring you this webinar featuring some select group of our Market Maven Gen Z panel. I'm going to introduce each one of them and with a little tidbit about each one. First, I'm going to start with you, Josh. Josh is a photographer, content creator, and a student. I gave them all about 5 minutes of prep to tell us what a fun road trip would be for them. Josh, you want to share?
Hello. A fun road trip for me. I really enjoy mountains anywhere, but Colorado specifically, because I live in St. Louis and I've done the drive from Colorado to St. Louis, but I kind of want to do it going from St. Louis to Colorado and maybe even go a little further west. But yeah, that would be my ideal spot.
Nice. I have not done that trip. That would be great. Okay, next up is Sky. Sky is a student of graphic design, and she's also a musician. Sky, what's your fantasy or fun road trip idea?
So I absolutely adore Sedona, Arizona. So I think I would want to take a Volkswagen bus and like just drive around in like the Red Rocks and all of that stuff because I love the energy there. So that's where I would go.
Nice. Another second vote for mountains.
Mhm.
Kamadi, we're going to Kamadi next. Kamadi cooks part-time, and he's a musician, rapper, producer.
Hi. I'm from North Carolina and I don't really travel much. I've really only been on the East Coast. That's really the only places I've traveled. I think to make the max distance, I would just take myself somewhere on the West Coast. California, yeah. Maybe another state. Washington sounds cool. Seattle seems like a cool place. I heard they have really good pastries. So
Nice. Yeah. It's not a good road trip without good food.
yeah,
Plus,
and
I'm
also
sure.
going to the West Coast gives me more journey, and I'm like definitely a journey person when it comes to road trips.
Nice. Okay, next up is Sydney. Sydney is a full-time student, literature major, who will be graduating this year. Sydney,
Okay.
what's your road trip?
I live in New York, so I want to basically go as far across as possible. Maybe in a few years, maybe with end in Las Vegas, go to a chapel and get married by Elvis. Uh, maybe not
Okay.
literally, but just like I think it would be cool to have an Elvis wedding, like at
All
midnight.
right. That's a fun one. All right. Next, you're up, Natalie.
Ooh, where would I go on a road trip? Well, I'm currently in Baja California, or Mexico. So I would just want to, I drove down here from Chicago when I moved here. So I'd want to go back up, but slower. Because when I drove down, it was like, just get there. It was no sightseeing, no anything. So I'd like to, it's a 30-hour drive. So I'd like to take like a week and go through the entire Baja Peninsula and stop and sleep on the beaches and do that. That would be really fun. I didn't get the full experience on my
When you were
bat,
moving.
flying through the highways. Yeah.
Okay, so let's kick it off, Nat.
Awesome. So, hi, everyone. Thankfully, our panelists are joining us today, and we've had some really good prep work and some awesome kind of conversations to help us inspire the content for this webinar. And we're relying on both quantitative data around Gen Z, so large swaths of how Gen Z is behaving as a demographic, and also the more qualitative aspects of the conversations that we'd have with them. What's important? What are we seeing that aligns with that? Are we seeing anything that is a little bit separate from that? Can we add context and nuance and something special for you guys So it's not just headlines about Gen Z, but truly, what's actionable and meaningful from an emotional perspective. So we can jump to the next slide, and we're going to go through the agenda for today. So you've met the panelists. Then we're going to look at perceptions of car brands. So how are car brands perceived? What are their favorite brands? Why? Vehicle feature preferences. So what are they looking at or for in a vehicle? What's important? Why is that important? And then we're going to close with some cost considerations and marketing. How do you speak to them? What actually ignites them and creates a relationship? What does car loyalty and brand loyalty in the automotive space mean? And then if we'll have time, we'll do some key takeaways. And if not, we'll just jump straight into the Q&A session where you guys can send us your questions. If throughout this process, you guys in the audience have questions, don't feel you have to hold it, type it into the Q&A chat, and we will collect those. We've already had some via email that have been sent to us, so thank you for those who did that in advance, and we'll make sure everyone's questions are answered.
Sorry, before we move on, I failed to mention this. If you take your mouse, if those of you are not that familiar with Zoom, take your mouse and hover over the screen, you will see a Q&A button, and you just pop that open and you type in your questions, as Natalie said.
Awesome. Thanks, Machina. Okay, so we can go on to perceptions of car brands. So there is a big conversation in the media, and I'm sure everyone in the audience is very acutely aware of this idea that Gen Z is going to be the death of car ownership, and they are not buying cars, and they are anti-car, the same way that was with millennials. And it seems like every generation has some kind of scare around vehicle ownership and the changes that are happening. And what we're seeing is that is not the case, similarly as it was not the case for millennials. Maybe there's a delay in how the generation is purchasing vehicles and considering car ownership, but eventually it happens. And so what we're seeing, and you will hear from the panelists themselves, is Gen Z craves cars. They use cars. They're in cars. It's very functional. There is a strong relationship with vehicle ownership, but loyalty is up for grabs. And so that's a positive because there's still a lot of time to create that relationship with this generation. And we have Josh, a quote from Josh here, where he's aligning with that, saying, there's all these predictions like Gen Z is going to kill the car buying market, but realistically, the trend he's noticing is that a lot more people want to be able to drive a reliable car. So for him, that means, okay, people are actually looking at newer cars, looking at owning vehicles that are newer models, things that are more reliable, especially because cars are now really computers in many ways. And so you really need something newer that's more reliable. And so he sees his friends and his peers looking for newer vehicles, looking at car ownership and car buying. And even though they may not want to put down that volume of money, and there's many economic and social considerations for that, they're at the stage where it is super important and they're really beginning to feel the value of having a newer vehicle. We can jump to the next slide. So some quick perceptions of car brands. So as we spoke about, Gen Z is buying cars. That X number should actually say 40%. So 40% of Gen Z expect to buy a car in the next 12 months. And that's split about half and half. So half are expecting to buy a used vehicle and half are expecting to buy a new vehicle. And so what we're seeing when we did some cursory market research leading up to this to kind of have an understanding of, quantitatively, where is Gen Z sitting? We did some polls and found that actually within Gen Z, there's a higher percentage of Gen Z than other demographics that are looking at car buying and car ownership in the next 12 months. Now, by volume, that's smaller because the volume of millennials that are going to be purchasing vehicles in the next 12 months is higher. But in terms of the percentage of that generation, of that audience surveyed, Gen Z is the highest. So that was surprising for us. But we're hearing that in Josh's communication and the communication you'll hear from the panel. There's not a lot of knowledge and passion around understanding vehicles and auto brands. And so the beauty of that is there is still time to educate because there hasn't seemed to be a very consistent and reliable education or voice for Gen Z from auto brands. And there's low loyalty as a result of that. And so there is a gravitation of vehicles they're familiar with, vehicles their parents had, vehicles they have experience with. And so there is really an important element of legacy and reliable experience that's there. And we'll jump right into a conversation. So I'd love to start with what makes your favorite car brands your favorites, and just talking about your experience with vehicles. What does that perception of a car brand look like to you? What do you think about loyalty? I know, Kamadi, you've spoken a lot about familiarity and, you know, your experience with Honda and your family, but I'd like to start with Josh for this, and then we'll jump to some of the other panelists as well.
Kind of like you were saying earlier, a lot of cars are like computers now. And at this point, it's not like I think that a lot of people definitely do have their favorite car brands. And I guess mine would be, they're not like favorite, but just like more desired car brands, like brands like Honda, Toyota, brands like that because of how reliable they are. And like that's what they're known for. Like I remember when I went on a road trip to from Chicago to Detroit, my friend, she only put gas in her Honda like once before we left. And I think the only time that we filled up was when we got back to Chicago. Like it was just great. So I guess just like stuff like that, like the gas mileage, little specs like that. But yeah, for the most part, kind of just the features, like the newer features, stuff like that. Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question that I'm going to jump to you, Kamadi. For Josh, when you're understanding that relationship with Honda, Toyota, you're seeing that fuel efficiency, right, through your experiences.
Yeah.
What is your core relationship? And I'm going to ask Josh to follow up and then jump to you, Kamadi. Josh, what is your core experience with Honda and Toyota? Like, where did you first experience the brand? Kind of how did those brands become in your worldview, your awareness? Do you remember the first time?
Yeah. So I remember when I was about 11 or 12, one of my older brothers, he had this Honda JDM. I forgot the full name of it, but he had this like it was like this red car. He really liked it and it was really cool, but just the how into it he was really stuck with me. And it gave me the example of like when people talk about like if you ever heard the term like I'm a big car guy, like when people talk about being car guys or car women or anything like that, then like that's automatic what I envision. And I know that a lot of people who are into cars they like manufacturers like Honda and everything. I'm not exactly sure why, but I know that's like one of the main manufacturers that a lot of like car people are into.
Awesome. And Kamani, I know you're team Honda in many ways.
Yes.
Tell us kind of what are your favorite brands? How did you come to your perception of Honda or other car brands? Kind of walk us through your experience and where you think that you became aware of it. What did you like about it? Why do you like it?
Well, I really just kind of playing the card I've been dealt with. You know, I'm 20 years old. I'm still driving my first car that I've been given as a teenager. And it's, you know, it has shown me my reliability in the last 3 years, almost four at this point. Um, but I just gravitate to it because, you know, I just saw the first quote on the presentation was loyalty, and I completely neglected that word when I was doing like the little assignment. I just realized like all my family, like both my brothers and my mother, both all have a Honda, and I do too. So it's like can't not really be loyal to it. Like if I need to borrow somebody's car, it's gonna be a Honda too. So
Nice. Thanks, Kamani. And so there's a lot of like familiarity there, right? So you're seeing it in your experience, you growing up kind of with Hondas, your first
yeah.
vehicle that was gifted to you as a Honda.
Yeah, and not only that, but my mom has Honda that I've had that since I got my permit. So like my first driving car, even regardless of me ownership, it was a Honda. So even I haven't really driven other cars as much, so um inevitably there's familiarity there, like comparatively against other brands. I just don't be driving other cars.
Thanks, Kamani. And Sky, we're going to jump to you. So what about you? Favorite car brands? Why are they your favorite brands? What was your first experience with the brand?
So I still drive my first car. I'm 20 right now. I got it when I was 16. It's a Ford Fiesta. It's a 2011 Ford Fiesta. And like I was saying, it's still really reliable. Again, knock on wood. But it's great on gas. I actually DoorDash on the side sometimes, and it only takes like $20 depending on the price of gas, like to almost fill up my tank. So that's really helpful with like putting miles or like driving around on my car and making more money than I have to spend, like to fill up my gas to have me make the money. So it's really reliable. My dad drives a Ford, my mom has a Ford. So I really like Ford, I guess. And also, I'm pretty sure it started in Detroit, which is, I could be so wrong, but I think it is, which is where I live. So it's pretty common around here. And then my girlfriend has a Cadillac, which I didn't really know much about, but I also think those are super reliable because her car is really nice. Her family drives Cadillacs. So I feel like just again, familiarity is actually a bigger part than I realized. Now that I'm thinking about it because of my perceptions, like growing up around them, I think they're just good cars. So yeah.
And do you see that with your friends as well? Like your girlfriend has a Cadillac, her family, was driving Cadillacs. Do you see that around your peer groups too? People generally have the cars their parents had, or how are
I
you seeing
actually
your
would
friends
say,
making
yeah,
decisions?
I would say yes. I haven't really made that connection before, but thinking about it, like, yeah. And then my one friend, his dad works at Ford, so his whole family has always drove Fords. So I think it's just like what you're around is like what's good for you.
Thanks, Sky. And Sydney, we're going to jump to you. So, favorite car brands? What's your first experience with the car brand? Why is it your favorite? And then an additional question, which I'm going to pull in one other panelist at close as well to discuss this. What could a brand do that isn't in your current experience, to get your experience, to be familiar with you, to have some kind of trust with you? So we'll start with you, Sydney, on your favorite brands and why.
I don't know if I have like one favorite, but kind of like like Honda, Toyota, I just sort of grew up with and still here. It's like that's the reliable car. It's like sort of the gold standard for like a good car to drive. When I was shopping for a car a few months ago, even this like cab driver I was talking to, like, well, if you can get a Honda or Toyota, like you're all set. So I have a Nissan actually, but my parents, I grew up mostly in New York City, and for a lot of that time, my parents didn't have cars. So the loyalty aspect, like it's not there as much just for me. Um, yeah, I mean, I want something reliable, but I also like, I'll admit, like I care a lot about like aesthetics and how something looks. And if I'm shopping for a car, I want my car to look good. I want to like feel cute in my car and like want people to like see me driving around. And that doesn't mean it's like flashy or like anything too crazy. But just like, yeah, I want something to look nice. And I think so there might be brands like I don't know, Chevy, Ford, like that I'm just not as familiar with, and that in general I don't like, I haven't been as drawn to visually. And so I'd say, everyone has their preferences on what they look for and what they like. But I guess if I saw sort of like more attention being paid to like the actual like shape of the car and how it looks, then I think that would probably have an impact on me. Yeah.
You said a couple interesting things. You said that Honda and Toyota are brands that come up consistently among reliable, something like a good purchase, something that is going to last, like a really solid car choice. But you drive a Nissan. So and you didn't grow up with your parents driving cars, and so you don't have that familiarity. Where did you think you received that idea that Honda and Toyota are great cars? Is that your friends, your environment? You said a cab driver spoke something to you.
I mean,
where are you shaping that opinion?
my parents would say it. When I was much younger, they had cars. Yeah, they didn't, I don't think either of them ever had a Honda or Toyota though. My grandparents actually drove Toyotas on one side. On my dad's side, they drive like American cars and are from Detroit, but I'm closer with the other side. I can't like quite put my finger on like one moment or one source, but it's just like for as long as I can remember, that's sort of just like the popular narrative. And so I assume that if I'm still hearing that at 22 years old, there's gotta be like some reason
Some
why.
truth to it. And you drive a Nissan though. So did you choose the Nissan because of the silhouette? You like how it looks? Kind of what was that decision?
I couldn't afford a Honda or Toyota. They were a little out of my price range. But Nissan was sort of in it, but like my dad knows a lot about cars and he used to drive like Nissans sometimes. And so I mean I trusted him and he was like very involved in the process. And then I drive a Juke, which is like not a very popular model. I don't think they make it anymore. And it's also like bright yellow, which wasn't my intention, but it just like that's what was available at the time. So I sort of just went with it. But I like how it's like it's like a compact SUV. The back seat is like basically like not functional at all, but that's fine because I don't have people going back there. But yeah, I mean, I like how it looks, and I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, it's like too much. But also, my dad was like, it's a cute girl car. Like, it's a cute car for a college girl to drive around. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sydney. So I'm going to jump to our next section, which is vehicle preferences. But I want all of you guys to keep in mind kind of this question of how would a brand that you're not familiar with currently become familiar to you? Because we're going to jump back to that in the third section around marketing. So what does Gen Z want in a car? And I think what the audience is hearing and what I'm definitely hearing is I keep hearing this word reliable. So there seems to be a lot of pragmatism in how you guys are thinking about vehicles. And I know I've heard the word, it's a computer, it's a machine, it gets me from point A to point B. Like there's a lot of practicality that feels almost very traditional in a way that we haven't seen with millennials and we weren't seeing before. It was a lot more, oh, the silhouette and the thrill of the vehicle. And now you guys seem to be like, no, we just need something that works, that's reliable. And Kamani, we have a quote from you saying you're not really the big luxury car person because you like your Honda. You enjoy reliability and longevity in your vehicle. You're not really going to look for anything too visually appealing. At the end of the day, you're on the road and you're going somewhere. And that's what it's about. And I love that. And so we're going to go to the next slide. And so for the audience, for context, we asked all of the panelists if they were to buy a new car, say they had $40,000 to purchase a new vehicle, what would their choice be? And these were their responses. And so we're going to go through some of what we're seeing around vehicle features and preferences. But we also want to make a point, and I'm sure some of you in the audience may know this, around that emotional factor. And we're going to ask the panelists to speak to this a bit about this pragmatism, this reliability. Like you guys are growing up in a generation with a lot of, social and economic things happening that you're incredibly young to be going through. Pandemics, economic uncertainty, right? Like uncertainty in jobs, a completely new way of working, becoming more gig or freelance or entrepreneur, not necessarily being in a specific corporate ladder experience where all of these things were tied to your corporate experience, getting your first car, getting a house, all of it. You're not necessarily looking at starting families in the same way, not having the same kinds of relationships. So there's a lot of pragmatism that we're hearing from you guys. So I'd like you guys to speak to that when you're talking about what you're looking for in a vehicle. Also try and tell us why that is. Why is safety important to you? Why is the reliability so important to you? Why is fuel efficiency important to you? Like what are those emotional and social economic factors that support that? And we're going to start with Josh because I have you up here first, Josh, and you say you would buy a Toyota Camry. Can we actually keep that slide up? Because I want people to be able to reference everyone's choices because they might forget. So Josh, tell us about your choice. Your new car would be a Toyota Camry. Why is that?
So yeah, Toyota Camry. Just like we talked about earlier, the longevity of it, the gas mileage, but mainly the reliable factor of it. Because like I was talking about, a lot of people, especially like younger people nowadays, although I wouldn't even say they don't mind because they definitely mind. It's just they have a bit easier time spending $40,000 on a car that they know is reliable, but that doesn't mean that they want to spend $40,000 on a car every 3 to 5 years because they're getting a car that's not going to keep up with them. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, I mean, me personally, I live in St. Louis. So if I were to buy a car like a Dodge Charger or a Challenger, for example, 90% chance that somebody would try to steal it. And honestly, that's just not really what I would want to go through. So I just don't see, like Kamadi was saying, just don't really, I also just don't need a visual, like a super visually appealing car. Like I am a 24-year-old. I don't need to go out and buy this, and that. I just need something that's going to get me from point A to point B for as long as I need it to. I don't want to have to worry about it going out or me having to get tires or me having to get all these fixes and everything just to keep the car running. I would like to go to a dealership, purchase a car, walk away, and know that I can drive that car and get it serviced regularly. It's like I need to, like, because you should take care of your cars, but without any extra fees and all that, you know?
And something you also put here is you would also consider a hybrid because you don't want to use a lot of gas, but you don't want your car to be reliant on electric charging. Can you speak a little about electric vehicles? Are you interested in them? Why are you interested in them? Is it an environmental thing? What are your thoughts there?
I love the concept, but I would not get a fully electric vehicle. Like I would not get a Tesla. Like I just would not want to worry about constantly having to find somewhere to charge my car. And then on top of that, yeah, no, like I don't want it to just be too reliant on that. Like for example, there's some sort of outage or whatever, or I just need like my car to be charged or fueled at least. I don't want to have to worry about is there a charging station nearby? So I always know there's some sort of gas station around. You know what I mean? But like I
So
said,
you just don't want to be as reliant on charging stations, but if that
yeah,
technology were to
yeah,
increase, maybe you had a solar panel on the roof of your vehicle and that's what charged your vehicle, that would change the situation
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's a great concept. I'm definitely like not opposed to a hybrid, but just a fully electric car is just not something that I'm necessarily interested in because I don't want it to be too reliant on electricity.
Nice. Thanks, Josh. And Kamadi, you're next. You said you would buy a Honda model, a newer Honda model like what you have now, but there would be advanced features. What kind of advanced features would you be looking at? What are you interested in there?
I'm more so thinking of like I have an '08, so I guess advanced is more of a perspective thing. For me, the only car I've ever owned and seen as my own has been a car that I need a radio receiver to like connect to Bluetooth with. So along the lines of Josh, what you were saying, I completely agree with you on the fact that visual thing. We're speaking on necessity here at the end of the day. And the visual, um, like the super sleek, maybe inside isn't as maybe inside's more comfortable than another car. Like I'd use the money on reliability is what Josh said. Like my car is pre-owned, you know, like a lot of I would say a majority of at least people in Gen Z. I can't say the entire world. There's a lot of people know, and a lot of people aren't. But like I got a pre-owned car, $40,000. Maybe I could purchase a new Honda. That's cool. So there's more longevity on my parts in the car. And then that thing, the parts. Josh was speaking about spending some amount of money along the course of 3 to 5 years because it's an affordability thing for a newer luxury car as opposed to purchasing a newer model of a Honda that will last you a while and the parts are either inexpensive to get or inexpensive to fix. Because you always want to have a car that doesn't break your bank as far as getting something fixed because life is life. Something's going to happen to your car.
So
But
it seems like at some point there was more of a relationship with vehicle ownership and almost like iPhones. Like obviously that's a a really aggressive analogy because a car is significantly more expensive than an iPhone, but people were
Yeah.
trading up and trading in their vehicles a lot more. And it sounds like with your generation, you guys aren't particularly interested in that as much. You want a vehicle that you can have for a really long time and
Yeah,
maintain.
it's like I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like the necessity thing, like I feel like having a car itself is a luxury. So like that's why like I'm super like that's why I feel super I'm gonna choose a sustainable, reliable, like very something that can give me point A to point B because people don't have a car or the opportunity to get cars. So I feel like it's a luxury to have a car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a
I
car
just wanted to
is
point that out. I'm
private
sorry.
transportation versus public. So there is a luxury and exclusive aspect to that.
Mhm.
Sky, we're going to jump to you. So you would buy a BMW 330i. So take us through your decision, why a BMW, and then you also say you wanted a Tesla previously, but you don't want one anymore. So we want to talk about that too.
Yeah, so with the BMW, honestly, I don't know many people that have a BMW. I kind of literally just Googled like cute like $40,000 cars, and I was looking through the different models and reading a little bit about it. I also asked some of my friends and they were like, "Oh, like a starter BMW is cute." So I definitely like the shape of the car and how small it is. I don't like driving big bulky cars. I like little cars like low to the ground like that. So I looked at it and it seemed like pretty reliable. It was sleek. The engine, I was reading through the specs, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know much about what they mean, but it seemed like pretty good when I was comparing it to some other things. So I went with that because I just thought all around it seemed pretty solid. And it is a brand that I've also heard of and that I've heard good things about. Like I'm really not familiar much with Hondas or Toyotas. But then also, yeah, I would want a Tesla because I think they're super sleek. I like the look of them. And when you think of like electric cars, you think it sounds like a good thing, but I did do some research a while back on the lithium batteries that they used, like I wrote here, and they're really bad for the environment. They're not much better than gas. They might be worse. I don't remember. And then the way that they're sourced is not ethical for the workers and everything. And again, I don't want to support Elon Musk. So the Tesla is out, but I do like the idea of hybrid or electric cars.
Nice. Thanks, Sky. And
Mhm.
Sydney, let's take us through your decision. So I know you're currently in a Nissan, but if you had an influx of cash to buy a new vehicle, you would consider a Toyota, a Prius
Yeah.
hybrid.
Well, when I was looking for cars, I was trying really hard to find a used Prius, but the only ones in my price range had like over 200,000 miles on them. But I know they can also run like with a lot of miles compared to other brands. It's not the sexiest car in the world. No one really thinks that about a Prius, and it's not necessarily like my favorite visually. I just know that like they're amazing on gas mileage, and that's important to me. And I feel the same as Sky about electric cars. I don't really have any interest in an electric vehicle. I know that I think my grandparents, there's cars now that have like gas and electric. I don't really understand how those work though, so I can't really, maybe I'd be open to that. But yeah, I guess it's a super reliable, it's a Toyota, so I know it's reliable. And then it's also a hybrid. I also like hatchbacks more than sedans. So, I mean, I would also be happy with a Camry hybrid like Josh, but I prefer just like functionally how the Prius works.
Wonderful. Can we jump to the next slide, Em? And then I just want to read also a quote from you, Josh, from our prep call that I thought was super interesting. That when we talked about Sky wanting a BMW and she loves the look of it and it's super low, and you said that you were kind of into Beamers, but you worked in a BMW dealership for a couple of years, and that totally changed your perspective on what kind of car you wanted. You would see the same customers with a BMW come in to get service once every week, or even sometimes multiple times a week. And that alone instantly made you think, do I really want part of my car owning journey to be having to take it get serviced once a week? Because it's not that it's a bad car, but if it needs a lot of maintenance, is that the kind of lifestyle do you want? Do you want a car in your lifestyle that requires a lot of maintenance? And so for the audience, I read that because I'm really trying to give kind of more of emotional perspective to some of these quantitative stats we're seeing, which is that, of course, price is big. That makes a lot of sense, age, economic factors, but other major considerations, fuel efficiency, also with price, longevity and reliability, safety, and comfort. And it seems like there's a certain lifestyle that we're hearing and that the panel is expressing that they want, a certain feeling of comfort, security, longevity, sustainability, and ease, you know, not having something that's high maintenance or difficult. We're going to jump to the next section because I think we've done a lot of questions here and I want to make sure we have time. Next slide, please. And so for what is Gen Z considering? And what we spoke about with our prep call was kind of what makes them feel a brand messaging is appealing or it's unappealing. And what we came up with is Gen Z is not here for the thrill to drive. And so Sky, we have a quote from you that says, I feel like when the commercials are so overly dramatic, it's honestly kind of stupid and it feels like you're not selling a car. You're not selling a machine that's going to transport me place to place safely. It feels like it's a gimmick almost. And everyone kind of agreed with that, with this idea of this lack of transparency around the value that a brand or a vehicle model is providing you. And it's really trying to give you other things and not disclose the value. And that was a problem for you guys. You really want to understand transparently, what's the value? What's the purpose? Like, why should I buy this vehicle? Do you understand my considerations? We can jump to the next slide. And so we talked about different kinds of messaging. And we have this picture, I think, of also something that I think Sydney you brought up, which is like a Ford like pulling a what was it, like a skyscraper or something like that was like one of the ads. And that did not align with you. You're like, that doesn't tell me about my personal needs because I'm not going to be pulling a skyscraper. And obviously a Ford is a more masculine vehicle in terms of appearance, not gendered really, but just like the energy and the vibe of it. And it is more of a workhorse. So maybe that's not what you're personally looking for. And everyone said you guys remembered the Kia hamster ad and you liked it and it was like appealing, but Kia was not on any of your guys' lists. And so what we're understanding is attention grabbing ads may create awareness, but they do not get a brand on your consideration or shopping set necessarily. And so you still need messaging that gets to your pragmatic and practical needs of purchasing a car. And what you're really looking for also is a relationship that breeds familiarity and showcases that value. And Sydney, I saw your hand go up first, so I'm gonna call on you.
I actually didn't refer to the Ford ad. I was talking about a recent Dodge ad around like
Dodge
Christmas time that was like Fright Night, to be like, instead of like a jolly Christmas, it's like we're on the naughty list. And it was like really, I mean, it was entertaining, but like I also had thought about the hamster ad, and you know, plenty of people drive a Kia Soul. I don't have a problem with them, but I think the risk with an ad like that, especially with our generation, is like it's gonna be memeified. So you're like setting yourself up to be sort of a meme, and that might work sometimes, but it is gonna make that car you're gonna attach something to it in like the public consciousness, which is, I don't know, I don't want to like when I'm driving my car be like, oh, everyone's gonna like think of this ad or like this campaign. I kind of just want like just a car.
So Josh, what about you?
This kind of speaking to the Kia thing, if that's okay. One of the personal reasons that Kia wasn't on my list is I don't know if like this is something that's still happening, like the cars that are like being manufactured like today. But I know a very big problem for the past few years with Kia is how easy they are to steal. Like how easy they are to steal, break into, whatever. And that's like I really used to like Kias. Like I really used to want a Kia Optima specifically. And honestly, like if you would ask me this question like 4 years ago, Kia Optima would have been on my list, like the whole $40,000 question. But after the outbreak of like theft with them, it just turned me away completely and made me realize, okay, because I know that it's not just with Kia, it's like something in like the software or something. But just like that alone kind of made me think maybe I wouldn't buy that car, because why would I buy a car that's like easily accessible to everybody else? Like, yeah.
So it sounds like, safety, but in a different way. There's safety within the vehicle, airbags, all of that. But then there's also safety of my vehicle is going to be there when I step outside of my house, right? Like the brand is actually thinking about theft prevention and different things so that I don't have to be concerned about my insurance premium going up or my car being stolen and me having an unexpected kind of cost.
Yeah, because I know that earlier I mentioned the thing about like Chargers and Challengers and cars like that getting stolen a lot, but like with Kia specifically, like people are like really like bold with thefts. Like my friend, for example, somebody literally tried to steal hers while she was like, they knew that she was home in her like house going in and out helping like her parents move or something, and they still tried to steal it. Like it's one of those things where if they see a Kia, they're gonna steal it. One of my coworkers just had her Kia stolen like 2 weeks ago. Like it was bad.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. Thanks for sharing that. So I kind of want to talk and dive deeper into this need state that we're hearing, which is like you guys want to have something that is sustainable, but not even necessarily just sustainable for the environment, like sustainable for you. Like you come first. Your needs are the first thing that you need to fulfill before you can fulfill other things. So you want something that's reliable, something that you can get new parts easily, something that you don't have to maintain a lot. Like there's a lot of reliability. You want something that's safe, something you feel safe in driving, something you feel safe leaving on the street. Like, can you talk to us a bit about what those needs are, what's most important to you, and then really think about it from a car brand speaking to you? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking, oh, our car fits that. Like we have this ability to satisfy those needs, but maybe you're not communicating that brand's name. So help the audience understand how can they reach you? What do they need to say to you? What would really make a difference? Because we're hearing Honda, Toyota is super popular. What about other brands? We'll start with you, Sydney.
I guess, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think they still have this campaign anymore, but I remember one that I thought was really smart was for Subaru in the past. Their whole thing of like, well, it was like love, it's what makes a Subaru, but the emphasis was really on how they get passed down generation to generation, and families that have Subarus stick with Subarus. And I don't know, I just thought it was really smart because you're like, oh, like people clearly like once they have this car, they really love them, and they're also they're family cars, but they're not minivans. I like Subarus a lot too. I like how they look. And it sort of was like the perfect all-encompassing package of like safe, family oriented, also like looks nice. Also, it's like you think of nature and mountains, and it's just sort of like a nice image overall. I kind of wish they still had that campaign. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Thanks, Sydney. What about you, Sky?
I did not know about that campaign, but I feel like something like that actually would work, where it's like it's not that commercial where it's like the car zooming fast and then all the epic shots. Like it's just more of like this is a good sturdy car. We're good on gas. We're comfortable. It'll last you a while. Like this is just the car. Like I just feel like it sounds like we all just kind of want to hear like straight up like what makes your car like a good, sturdy, reliable car. And I feel like a campaign like that would definitely work for me and get my attention, and I would like take it seriously and consider it. So
I know a lot of vehicle brands are in this position of thinking about, okay, the environments that they show vehicles in, right? The types of messaging that exist. And there's still a lot of messaging around, pulling really big things for trucks, or going away on like through mountains and in your Jeep and et cetera. It doesn't sound like that's connecting with your generation. So what kind of situations, and Sky, this is for you in particular, would you want to see a vehicle in? Like, what would make you think, oh yeah, I see myself in that car. Like, I see myself in that situation.
I mean, I I know I have seen the commercials where it's like out in the wilderness and like off-roading and stuff, and like my dad had a Jeep at one point and that totally would have worked on him. But I feel like for me, it would be more of like a chill, like even just a girl on the road, like going to class, or like something that's like what I do in my day-to-day life, or like going to the park with my friends. I don't know, just something more not so like unrealistic and dramatic. I mean, not that off-roading is unrealistic, but for me it is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thanks, Sky. And Josh, quickly for you, and then we're going to jump to Q&A, and then we'll start with you for Q&A, Commodity.
Sure. What's it called? So kind of like with the Subaru commercial, I remember a completely like different campaign for this, like the safety aspect of Subaru. So it showcased this family like doing normal family things. I think they like went to their children's soccer games, they went and got food and everything. And then they grew up and it was time for the kids to go to school. They gave them a car and like they gave the kids a Subaru. But then the kids got in like some sort of accident, but they were okay. Like there was no harm. Like the kids were completely okay. But the car itself like took most of the damage. They're just like talking about how they were lucky they had a Subaru, and like that itself made it stick with me like for life. Okay, Subarus are always one of the safest cars. You know what I mean? So I guess just like that, but yeah, even though that didn't really have anything to do with like the actual specs, it didn't show, the epic shots and the cars moving fast and all that. It still communicated the values that it was trying to communicate without being too much or being too overwhelming.
Nice. So you really just want in situ expressions of the vehicle. Like, what's important to you? You guys have expressed what's important to you. You want reliability, sustainability. I want to feel safe. I want to have comfort. I want to think I can afford this, not just now, but also in maintenance. And I want that expressed to me. I don't want to see zooming racing, exciting mountaineering, big weekend trips. Like, I want something that really fits into my life.
It's like I like seeing it in a realistic setting, because even with the zooming fast shots, when am I going to get on the highway and there's going to be zero other cars around? Like, this is a commercial. We know that you guys paid to clear the road. Like, I'm never going to have the opportunity to actually drive a car like that even. So it's still not really appealing,
Got it. And we want to jump to Q&A. We're going to ask 3 questions before we close. I know we're a bit over time, so thank you everyone who's still with us for being with us. So questions around electric vehicles. So where do electric vehicles rank in priority? I know we heard some terms, so we have a bit of an understanding. So try and be very succinct in this answer. And then how are newer entry options in the electric vehicle space? So the Ford Mach-E, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, which has been getting a lot of attention lately, compared to an option like Tesla that's more established. Kamadi, we'll start with you. What do you think about electric vehicles? Are any of the newer electric vehicles something you're interested in?
I'm the definition of indifferent, because I've never been behind the wheel, and I think I said this a little briefly. I'm not too sure if you were a part of the seminar, like practice call earlier this week or last week, but I was mentioning how like if I didn't have a way to charge my vehicle from the crib, like I'm cool off that. Like I'm not getting an electric car. And Josh just said something that kind of paralleled that earlier in the call today, about how like there's really like the places that there will be charging stations will be like, okay, like a store parking lot, and then like another store parking lot, and then like a random street in downtown, and then like, okay, cool, like time to go get one like installed from my house or something. Like I don't have any like opinions about electric cars. I just think like,
So it sounds like it's pretty inconvenient at this
yeah,
stage.
I think it's inconvenient because a lot of it what I'm realizing through like a lot of conversation we're having is that like um us at this age, our lifestyle isn't um cars is not a big factor when it comes to decisions. So like in like not a bad way, but like I realized that like if I had $40,000 and I could get an electric car, there'd be nothing to gravitate me towards that because I haven't driven one and I'm like I was a teenager a year ago, you know, like I feel like if the people who are millennials now, Gen X, people who are older who have had experiences for tens of years on end with driving maybe various cars, could be the same one, um, like their experiences with because they would have more knowledge on, okay, where am I living? Could I afford a charging station at my house for an electric car? Things like that. And if I was the age I'm at now with money and I could get an electric car, as Josh was saying earlier, gas stations from a convenience standpoint are just way more convenient.
Got it. Thanks, Kamadi. So I want to take like, if everyone can take 5 seconds and tell me your stance on electric vehicles, which I think we're hearing that it's not super important, it's not a priority, it's pretty inconvenient for the full panel. But also I think a lot of things that the audience may be assuming and a lot of their research, their understanding is your demographic is super passionate about the environment and about sustainability and sustainable practices. And it seems like what we're understanding, speaking with you guys day in and day out, is there's aspiration, what you'd like to see, and then the actual capabilities, right? And so you can't necessarily sacrifice yourself and your daily needs and the things that are super important to how you're living your life for an aspiration, even though you'd like those things to match, they may not match right now. So talk to us about your take on electric vehicles and sustainability. How important is that to you? It doesn't sound like any of you are making decisions that are going to inconvenience you, your wallet, your time, just for driving a vehicle that people are saying is better for the environment. And it sounds like there's also some suspicion as well, Sky. You've noted about, you know, people saying Teslas are super sustainable, but your research showed they weren't. So if the remaining of you can take just like 5 or 10 seconds and share your thoughts on that. We'll start with you, Josh.
So kind of like Sky was saying with the batteries, for example, like, yeah, helping the environment and everything would be great. And I think that is a focus that a lot of people in this generation are focused on. But at the same time, if the car that we're driving helps the environment, but the way that we're getting it hurts the people in the environment, then like, what are we really doing? You know what I mean? And then even with this, the convenience aspect, like Marty was saying, with the charging station, I just feel like it would be, in my personal opinion, too inconvenient for like me in my situation. I just wouldn't want to go out of my way to have to constantly find a charging station, just like I wouldn't want to constantly have to get my car maintenance or anything like that. So I think it just goes into preference and everything. I don't think it's bad, you know? So yeah, it's kind of just my perspective on electric cars. But yeah.
Cool. And Sydney, what about you?
Yeah, the battery thing I think is pretty like ironic, considering that like it's not good for the environment at all. And so that also makes me much like less trustful of like these brands because their whole thing is like sustainability, we're helping the environment, a fully electric vehicle, and not wanting to talk about like the issue of the battery. And so that actually sort of makes it even worse for me. So yeah, I'm on the fence.
So there's some distrust there. Like they're asking you to inconvenience yourself financially and in your daily activities.
Yeah, well, that's
and
like,
you're not really understanding the full value or the benefit of that
yeah,
sustainability message.
kind of like it's pretty shady.
Okay, so it doesn't feel transparent. What about you, Sky?
So I think in theory, it really is like an awesome idea. If they could work out the kinks and source it better and actually make it better for the environment, then I'm 100% on board. Like I definitely really care about the environment. I think it's a really big problem that needs to be addressed. And I think they should be probably doing more research and trying to better it. I haven't heard of any of the cars that you listed that were coming out. I don't know much about those. But I think in a perfect world, they would have fully electric cars that really do help the environment, aren't hurting people. But right now they don't. And I think the Gen Z lifestyle is really fast. People don't like being inconvenienced. We like to go, 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 get our stuff done. And it's just not fitting in right now. But hopefully it does in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Sky. And we have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to pick two people and ask one question. And that question for the audience's help is it sounds like what we're hearing on this panel is there's not a lot of even knowledge or awareness around all of the various car options. Like you don't know about the Ford Mach-E or the Hyundai Ioniq 6. So this generation doesn't seem to be paying as much attention to vehicles, but you still do need to buy vehicles. And you're relying a lot on legacy information, familiarity, what your previous experience set has been. So how does a car brand that may not be in your familiarity, may not be with your previous experience, how do they reach you? How would you want to be spoken to? Is it a commercial? Is it seeing it in a show that you're watching? Is it talking to you on social media? Kind of what is it in like a Roblox, situation? What do they need to do to reach you? And we'll start with you, Josh.
Honestly, simplicity and straightforward. Like that's, in my opinion, the best approach to it. Like, and not even just with cars, but like with anything. Like I remember this like this like brand for eye contacts, and they like had the series of advertisements and everything. But the reason that it stuck with me and like why it's still very like vivid in my memory is because how simple it was and how to the point it was. Like they weren't trying to sell you their product. They were trying to almost give you something, trying to show you, okay, this is an option for this. They were showing a solution for a problem that I was having. And that feels completely different from being sold something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just with that aspect of it, that is a factor that could completely change how I perceive and like become aware of these car manufacturers and brands. But I think
And where can they reach you? Do you want to be spoken to? Like, where did you see that contact at? Was it on social media? Was
oh yeah,
it?
it was on social media and like in between like commercials, like TV shows and stuff.
So those ads kind of work for you if you're watching a television show, having something in the show or as a commercial or something on social media.
Yes.
And Sky, we're going to close with you answering this question as well. How can they reach you? What should they say to you?
Okay, this one's kind of hard because I feel like I really don't like the in your face, like really feeling like I'm being sold something. It feels oddly disingenuous to me. So I like how Josh was saying, like, if I have a problem and they're offering like more of a solution or something where it's like, look, like this is gonna make your life easier. Or more organic feeling advertisements, I guess, like maybe in a show. Maybe I hear it from my friend whose dad just got one and he's like, oh my gosh, it's really good. Like that stuff makes me pay more attention to it because I tend to trust the people around me more than I do like big corporations, I guess. Like if I hear that it's actually working for the average people in my life, then I'm more like, okay, yeah, like I would believe that and I would test it out.
So it sounds like you would really want information, like a brand to focus on not just you, but also your environment, your social circles, your peers, so that when you're receiving information, everyone kind of understands, has the same similar set of information and opinions, and can communicate with you and dialogue with you
More
about it.
organic. Like it's just people are talking about it because it's that great of a product and I'm hearing about it, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Sky. Well, thank you, panelists. We are at the hour, so we want to make sure we're closing and not taking up too much time. Thank you for everyone in the audience for watching. We appreciate your engagement. Thank you for sending questions. Mata, do you have any final closing thoughts?
No, thank you, everyone. This has been really great and insightful. And thanks to our partner, Kalen Flex, in supporting us in this endeavor. Thanks, everyone. Have
Wonderful.
a great day. Be safe on the road.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.